Hey everyone, welcome. I'm John underneath the helmet today, and we're looking at my couple-week-old Honda CRF450RL. This is the dual sport model. So what we're going to do today is mount this high horse, and I'm going to load up my little Thrill Seekers bag here. Bar bag 9000 I think it's called. Gonna put my cell phone and my wallet in there. No advertisement for that. It's just a really handy thing to have if you have a bike with no storage and you don't really feel like keeping things in your pockets. So today we're gonna go run up, refuel, and gonna go on a little ride, give you my initial but not first impressions of the bike. So when I say initial, I've had this bike for a few weeks now and I've ridden it for 39 miles already. However, I felt it necessary to do that with this bike because this is not your average Honda Monkey, Honda Grom, Honda Trail 125, the other bikes that I have. They're not really the get on and go bikes and know your limits the first time you ride it sort of bike, like topping out how fast it's gonna go. Like I could tell how fast a Monkey is gonna go on my 45-mile-an-hour road here because it tops out at 55, so this bike requires a little bit more time to get used to and to figure out enough info to provide a decent initial sort of impressions. So I've ridden it off-road for most of those miles, and that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna go get some gas, and I'm gonna tell you how I think it feels on road while we're going to get the gas, and I might hit some curvy roads, some of the very few that we have around here where I live in Florida. And then I'm going to take you to the trails that are at my parents' property that we set up. So, alright, fuel injection. I mean, it's always good to warm stuff up, but I don't really know how much you need to warm up the fuel injection modern bikes. So we're just gonna go, and it's always warm here in Florida. It's not like I'm running on a cold engine. So going visor down here. It's a little bit windy, so right off the bat, the bike has tons of power, tons of torque from what I'm used to. I mean, I'm not riding a 500 or 750 or whatever. I mean, this is not going to be the fastest bike out there to most people, but to me, coming from the 125 small bores, the Monkey and the Grom and the Trail 125, jumping on this is like going from a rowboat to an offshore power boat. So I can really appreciate how much faster this bike is than the little bikes that I'm used to riding. Also, the first thing I noticed, I'll show you. Hear that? Okay, so along with the racing sort of bike aspect of this, motocross sort of bike, you have a really quick shifting transmission. So that's good. Because with a performance bike, you want it to shift quickly. However, coming from the smaller bikes, the clutch is a lot tighter and the revs drop a lot faster. So I feel like it's pretty critical to do RPM match downshifting. So this would be the throttle blipping when you downshift to make sure that the RPMs of the motor are matching that of the rear tire, or else the RPMs drop so fast that your rear tire kind of skids on the downshifts. That's something that I like because I'm used to high performance stuff, and I race cars and race vintage motocross, and I've raced something my whole life. So RPM matching and quick throttles are something that I can appreciate. However, if you're coming from the bigger, more road-going bikes, you might find that a little bit irritating. You might find it kind of wonky. So I myself, I like it. I like the RPM blipping. Let's see. So basically, the bike likes to live in the higher RPM area. And with 6 gears, you got plenty of gears to play with. Now, this all gets a little bit trickier when you go off-road, because you don't shift as much. And we'll get to that when we get to the off-road part. So it kind of, you know, feels like a dirt bike on the road. You know, you're not going to get away from that. And that's why I got it, because I want a motocross bike that is street legal. So perfectly fine by me. I don't plan on spending a lot of time on the road or the streets. So I'd rather have it biased towards feeling dirt bikey. But if you're buying this for primary road use, you know, the stiff nature of the forks and the quick shifting stuff might be a little troublesome or bothersome for you when you're navigating your daily grind. So, alright, well, we're gonna sit in traffic here for a minute, and I guess it might be a good time to explain the clutch grab. So when I first got this bike, the clutch grab was really low, and I spaced it out a little bit. I wanted it to grab higher in the lever area, so I didn't want it to grab right off the handlebar. I wanted it to engage in the middle towards the top of it, because I just found it was a little bit too fast for my liking. So that's one of the first things I did. Luckily there's an adjustment star right here where you can adjust the clutch. So I really despise street riding here in Florida. There's just a lot of traffic and the roads aren't exciting. It's just kind of dicey to me. I live somewhat close to Orlando and the attractions. I actually work at Disney World, so I have to navigate tourist traffic every day, and that's why I'll never ride this bike to work or commute with it. So the roads down here are just not fun. So probably not going to find much content on my channel about road riding here in Florida. So alright, let's get to this gas station and get her filled up with some 91 non-ethanol. So my normal ethanol free stop let me down. They do not have the 91 anymore. Alright, so full tank of fuel. She gets up 60 miles an hour really quick, even short shifting. The RPMs can go up quite a ways. I've wound it out a few times, but I'm trying not to hit the rev limiter too much while I'm still breaking it in. So alright, so as we sit here, the bike's really tall. I mean, I'm 6'1", the boots on definitely, and I can flat foot it, you know, but basically it's a pretty tall bike. So if you're sub 6 foot, you're gonna have to tow it. You know, if you're 5 foot something, you're gonna have to, you know, you have to jump onto this bike. So I like that. Tall bike's good for me. It's good for what I want to do. So just something to be mindful about if you're on the sub 6 foot height range on the scale. So alright, let's cruise a little bit. Alright, so as we're cruising about 45 miles an hour, and I'm in 6 gears, so I'm turning some pretty low RPMs. Fuel mileage, which I told you I didn't really care about earlier, but it's just curious to watch this little gauge go, what your average miles per gallon is at this very moment. It's in the low 60s. I mean, this is about as cruisy as it gets. So I don't know what the miles per gallon is on this in real life, or you know, real world findings of it are, but for me, I don't know. Not something I'm really interested in, but something that y'all might be interested in. So it looks like, you know, if you cruise around sub 50 mile an hour, sub 55 mile an hour roads, you're probably going to be around 60 miles per gallon. So this is in stock form. I know that varies greatly with modifications, especially when you throw an ECU on these bikes. So once again, not something that I care about, but something that is initial impression, or something that I've noticed. Alright, so we'll check back in here, do a little visor up riding, cool off a little bit, check out some of the neighborhood riding features of it. This is one of those neighborhoods where it's just pretty much right angles and gridded streets. So we'll see how she cruises. It's about 30 mile an hour roads. It gives me a chance to show you the blip downshifting techniques that I'm using. So this is a good time. I just missed a shift, so I'll go over that. We'll start here. I use 2 fingers for this clutch. The clutch is a little heavy. But that's why I adjusted my clutch, because you really have to pull it down. Maybe it's the way that the dealership set it up, if they had to adjust it. I don't know if they did or not. But that's why I adjusted it, because right there, when you finger it all the way, it presses up against my other fingers and it disengages, but just barely. So that's where I like it. But it's nice that you can adjust that kind of on the fly here. Maybe we'll do that. Take a little stop here. We'll adjust this clutch one tighter. Let's see if that gives us, so our sweet spot is now right there. So a little bit further in. Nice little skid there. Test the rear brake. I was gonna turn in. That's why you don't grab the rear brake on a dirt bike, because you're gonna slide. It's kind of a cool experience though. You don't really get to slide in a somewhat controlled environment too often. You come in too hot for a turn, you pull that rear brake, and you're gonna slide. Or you hit down on that rear brake, you're definitely gonna slide. Let's try that again. Okay, you probably heard it. So, rear brake on this bike works really good, but when you're riding on the road, you should already know that you want to mostly use front brake. So you want to focus on front brake and then blend in the rear brake. I learned that in my motorcycle school, where I got my learners, or my motorcycle permit. Doesn't have enough power to spin the rear wheel coming out of a corner like that on concrete, and that I like that, because to me that would almost be too much power. So that's a good thing. So now we're going to grab a lot of front brake and no sliding. Also no stoppy bonuses either, no endos, which is good, because I don't know if I can control an endo if I did it. Let's see. Yep. Oh, okay. Here's a good opportunity to talk about the flame out issue that a lot of people complain about. So let's do that again. So you hear me with the clutch. All right. So if I wanted to just let the clutch out to the sweet spot and then walk with it and go, no throttle, I could do that. Okay, let's do that again. No throttle, let the clutch out, sweet spot it, walk with it, and then I can get going. It doesn't flame out when you do that. However, if you let out on the clutch a little bit too fast and you're not quick with your throttle, that's when it flames out. Let's try it again. Alright, you see it get kind of chunky. So normally the bike shouldn't flame out when you're just starting off, but sometimes it has a tendency to do that. Let's see. So you really kind of have to be quick with your throttle, or else you get that flame out stalling issue. Now, I think that's a common thing with 450s. One of the largest complaints I saw with this bike is the flame out issue. So this is something that you'll experience in tight technical trail riding more than street riding, but I have found it to get me a couple times in street riding when I do come to stops and stop and go type of stuff. So alright, not a big deal for me really. You know, I just feel as if you got to be more diligent on the clutch. It's got a race bike, motocross race bike engine in it that's detuned and with a bunch of emission stuff on it. So it's not going to be very perfectly mannered on the road. So I like using a lot of clutch. I'm a clutch featherer. I can do it pretty easily. I ride a 2-stroke vintage motocross bike. So for me, feathering the clutch is not really a big deal, but for some people it might be. And then you might experience that flame out issue, which I'll probably show you more prevalent when we go check out some trails. Alright, so here we got some Amusement Trails, which are kind of popular here in Florida. These are usually tucked away behind or between communities and stuff, and a lot of people don't respect the land at all, dumping tires and junk. Oh, and there's a lot of holes. That one caught me off guard. So this is pretty easy riding. It's just grass, some birds and butterflies, maybe a stray gator or two. That'd be cool if one popped up, said hi. But this is stand-up riding to me. Could be sit-down riding, but I don't like those sudden holes that come up, so I like standing up. And this is what's great about a dual sport, is that if you see something like this, you can have at it. If it's not much, it's going to say no to your dual sport. It's kind of making me wish that I had my fishing pole with me here. Sometimes there's, oh, that's a shame, a whole box spring and mattress there. This green covering on this water is called duckweed. It's kind of interesting. A little bit of dirt. It is really nice to have the power in this thing to do what you want to do. Now here's a section of water that I contemplated going through with my Trail 125 a while back on my Trail 125 video. So I really want to try this out, and I think I finally have the right bike to do it. Let's do it. Let's try it. Yes, sir. That was so much fun. I need to do it again. No problem whatsoever. Ooh, now there is a classic example of a flame out. So I just went to do a little clutch pop to turn, and she flamed out, and you even heard it backfire a bit. So that was interesting. Alright, so much fun, you got to do it twice. Now this is where I'll feather the clutch a bit. So feathering the clutch is critical when you're wanting to go slow and technical, not just full blast or something. And I'll show you one more time. Maybe keep an eye on my finger through this. So slow and technical. Hear the clutch feather in. And then we power out. So that's a prime example of the flame out and why this bike needs to be clutch feathered quite a bit when you're trying to do tight and technical in OEM trim. So, alright, well that went about as good as I had hoped that it went. And now we're going to get back on the road a bit, and I'm going to take you down to our hare scramble training area, or basically our track on my parents' 5 acres, and we'll shake the bike down a little bit more.